Few artists in modern music inspire as much discussion, admiration, debate, and sometimes criticism as Taylor Swift. The pop superstar has built a massive cultural empire through confessional songwriting, genre experimentation, and a loyal fanbase that spans generations. Yet despite her overwhelming commercial success and critical accolades, some rock musicians have openly questioned her songwriting approach. The most recent voice to enter that conversation is Jack White, the fiercely independent rock musician known for his work with the White Stripes. White recently criticized what he called the Taylor Swift way of songwriting, a phrase that sparked renewed debate about authenticity, collaboration, and artistic ownership in the music industry. But White is far from the first rocker to weigh in on Swift's artistry. Over the years, numerous musicians from the rock world, from legends to outspoken provocateurs, have shared their thoughts on the pop phenomenon. Some praised her lyrical craft, others questioned the machinery behind her success, and a few simply used her as a symbol of a broader cultural divide between rock and pop. Here's a deeper look at Jack White's criticism, and 13 other rock artists who have weighed in on Taylor Swift's songwriting legacy. Jack White and the Taylor Swift way. When Jack White speaks about music, people listen. The guitarist, singer, and producer has long positioned himself as a defender of traditional rock values, raw performance, analog recording techniques, and the romantic idea of the lone songwriter. During a recent conversation about modern songwriting, White referenced what he described as the Taylor Swift way. In his view, contemporary pop music often involves large teams of collaborators, producers, and songwriters shaping a track behind the scenes. White suggested that this approach can dilute the sense of personal artistic struggle that he believes lies at the heart of rock music. For him, songwriting is about solitude and experimentation, sometimes even failure. He has often described the creative process as a battle between the artist and the unknown. Swift's process, by contrast, frequently involves collaboration with top producers like Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner. To White, that reflects a modern pop model rather than the traditional rock ethos he grew up admiring. Of course, Swift's supporters point out that collaboration has always been part of music history, from songwriting teams in the Motown era to legendary partnerships like Elton John and Bernie Taupin. Still, White's comments reignited the perennial debate about what constitutes authentic songwriting. Damon Albarn, the songwriting debate. One of the most public clashes involving Swift came from Damon Albarn, frontman of Blur and the creative force behind Gorillaz. Albarn sparked controversy when he suggested Swift doesn't write her own songs, arguing that collaborating with co-writers meant she wasn't a traditional songwriter. Swift immediately responded online, pointing out that she writes or co-writes nearly all of her material. The debate quickly went viral, with musicians and fans jumping to her defense. Albarn later apologized, saying his remarks had been misunderstood. Still, the moment highlighted how strongly artists can feel about the definition of songwriting. Noel Gallagher, a classic rock perspective. Another outspoken critic has been Noel Gallagher, former guitarist and chief songwriter of Oasis. Gallagher has frequently mocked modern pop stars in interviews, and Swift has occasionally been caught in his crosshairs. He once dismissed contemporary pop music as overly polished and corporate, a criticism many fans interpreted as indirectly aimed at Swift's brand of mainstream pop. However, Gallagher has also acknowledged that writing hit songs consistently is no small feat. Dave Grohl, from Joke to Respect. Few moments involving Swift and a rock star became as memorable as the comments from Dave Grohl, frontman of Foo Fighters and former drummer for Nirvana. Grohl once jokingly referred to Swift's music as something his band couldn't compete with, suggesting her concerts relied more on spectacle than live musicianship. Swift responded playfully during a concert, emphasizing that her band performs live every night. Grohl later praised her professionalism and work ethic, showing how criticism can sometimes evolve into respect. Gene Simmons. Commercial success versus rock tradition. Gene Simmons of Kiss has frequently lamented what he calls the decline of traditional rock music. While he hasn't targeted Swift specifically as often as others, Simmons has used pop stars like her as examples of how the industry has shifted away from guitar-driven music. He once argued that rock bands struggle to break through in an era dominated by pop icons and streaming algorithms. For Simmons, Swift represents a broader cultural shift, not necessarily a lack of talent. Courtney Love. A complicated view. Courtney Love, the outspoken singer of Hole, has had a complicated relationship with Swift's music. At times she has criticized the commercialization of pop culture, suggesting it prioritizes image over artistic risk. But Love has also acknowledged Swift's songwriting abilities and her influence on young women entering the industry. That dual perspective reflects a broader tension between rock's rebellious mythology and pop's global reach. Billy Corgan. Respect for songcraft. Not all rock voices have been critical. Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins has expressed admiration for Swift's ability to craft emotionally resonant songs. Corgan has pointed out that connecting with millions of listeners requires genuine songwriting skill, regardless of genre. In interviews, he has emphasized that great songwriting transcends labels like rock or pop. Trent Reznor. The industry machine. Trent Reznor, the mastermind behind 9 Inch Nails, has often spoken critically about the commercialization of modern music. While he rarely singles out Swift, his comments about the pop industry's marketing machinery are frequently interpreted through the lens of megastars like her. Reznor has argued that the music business sometimes prioritizes brand building over artistic experimentation. Yet he has also acknowledged that navigating the modern industry requires intelligence and strategic thinking. Elvis Costello. The craft of lyrics. Veteran songwriter Elvis Costello has offered a more nuanced take on Swift's music. Costello has praised her storytelling instincts, comparing her ability to write narrative songs to classic folk and country traditions. Before becoming a global pop star, Swift emerged from the Nashville songwriting scene, a background that Costello believes shaped her lyrical style. Bruce Springsteen. Storytelling tradition. Few artists embody the tradition of narrative songwriting more than Bruce Springsteen. While he has rarely commented directly on Swift, Springsteen has spoken broadly about younger artists carrying forward the storytelling tradition in popular music. Many critics see Swift's songs, particularly albums like Folklore and Evermore, as part of that lineage. Lars Ulrich. Pop dominance. Lars Ulrich of Metallica has acknowledged Swift's enormous influence on the modern music landscape. Rather than criticizing her songwriting, Ulrich has focused on the broader question of how streaming and fan culture have reshaped the industry. Swift's record-breaking tours and album sales, he argues, demonstrate a rare ability to connect with audiences at scale. Robert Smith. Indie admiration. Even within alternative rock, opinions vary. Robert Smith of The Cure has expressed admiration for artists who maintain strong relationships with their fans, something Swift is famous for. Smith has noted that fan engagement can be just as important as musical style. Rivers Cuomo. Songwriting mechanics. Rivers Cuomo, leader of Weezer, has discussed the mechanics of pop songwriting in ways that indirectly parallel Swift's methods. Cuomo himself uses data, spreadsheets, and analytical approaches to craft melodies, proving that even rock musicians sometimes embrace pop-style songwriting strategies. Sting. Craft and longevity. Finally, Sting, formerly of The Police, has emphasized the importance of longevity in evaluating artists. For Sting, the true test of songwriting isn't how a song performs in its first year, but whether people are still listening decades later. Swift's career, now spanning nearly 2 decades, is beginning to approach that benchmark. The larger debate: what counts as real songwriting? The conversation sparked by Jack White ultimately reflects a deeper philosophical divide. Rock culture often celebrates the image of a solitary songwriter, someone with a guitar, pouring personal experiences into raw music. Pop culture, on the other hand, frequently embraces collaboration, studio experimentation, and genre blending. Swift's career sits at the intersection of those traditions. She began as a teenage country songwriter, writing diary-like lyrics about relationships and growing up. Over time she expanded into pop, indie folk, and alternative rock influences. Albums like Folklore and Evermore, created during the pandemic with Aaron Dessner, earned critical acclaim for their introspective storytelling. At the same time, Swift's blockbuster tours and elaborate productions embody the spectacle of modern pop stardom. Why rock stars keep talking about Taylor Swift? There's also a simple reason Swift attracts so much commentary: she is impossible to ignore. Few artists dominate the cultural conversation the way she does. Her The Eras tour became one of the highest-grossing tours in history, breaking records around the world. That level of influence naturally invites scrutiny, especially from musicians who built their careers in earlier eras of the industry. For some rock veterans, Swift represents the triumph of pop over guitar-driven music. For others, she represents the evolution of songwriting in a digital age. And for many listeners, she's simply one of the most compelling storytellers of her generation. The bottom line: Jack White's critique of the Taylor Swift way is unlikely to end the debate about songwriting authenticity. If anything, it adds another chapter to a long-running cultural conversation. From critics like Damon Albarn and Noel Gallagher to supporters like Billy Corgan and Elvis Costello, rock musicians continue to grapple with Swift's influence. What's undeniable is that Swift's music has sparked discussion across genres, something few artists achieve. And whether rock legends love her or question her methods, they keep talking about her. In the ever-evolving world of popular music, that alone is a sign of lasting impact.